So what exactly are in these allegations by the US?
Well, there's been 2 cases of Chinese citizens just in the last year who have been arrested and charged over espionage allegations in the US in Houston. They were based out of the Houston Consulate. But according to US officials, including those in the FBI, this is really just the tip of the iceberg. Apparently, the FBI has cases now, counterintelligence cases, 2,000 counterintelligence cases against Chinese operations in the US. So it is an enormous challenge for the security services in the US. And they say, again, that Houston and other consulates in the US are being used as launch pads for everything from visa fraud to spying to intellectual property theft to influence campaigns against local officials, business leaders, but also something called Operation Fox Hunt, where Chinese counterintelligence or intelligence officers try to round up dissidents based in the US and convince them to return to China. So it's a plethora of issues that Chinese or US officials are dealing with when it comes to what they say are these influence campaigns from Chinese officials operating out of these consulates. And they really tried to frame this as separate to some of the other tensions between Beijing and Washington, essentially saying they have now lost patience with China over issues of IP theft and spying, and that they're not going to deal with these cases and treat these cases as individual criminal cases. They will now look at them in terms of the broad spectrum of Beijing's push, again, around issues of intellectual property theft, influence campaigns, and broader spying allegations. Now, China has come out and denied these allegations, and it did retaliate late last week on Friday by ordering the closure of the US consulate in Chengdu. So those tensions have been playing out over the weekend.
Yeah, talking about those tensions, more anger from China over how U.S. officials dealt with the Houston consulate closure.
Well, we saw these images on Friday in Houston of US officials trying to force their way in to the consulate. They gave them 72 hours to close the building, and then you saw members of the Department of State and other officials, it seems, trying to force their way into the building. And that caused a lot of anger here in China. Beijing's officials saying that this was in contravention of the VN conventions on diplomacy. And they said that they would take appropriate retaliatory measures. As I said, they have already ordered the closure of the consulate in Chengdu. This is a consulate, by the way, that would oversee the province of Sichuan, Guizhou, but also Tibet, where for a long time, of course, Chinese Communist Party officials have tried to deal with uprising and discontent amongst the Tibetan population. It was an area, it was a consulate that gave the US eyes into what was happening in Tibet. So that closes that off. They have until Monday morning, Beijing time, to close that consulate, and then diplomats, US diplomats, will be asked to leave within 30 days. There were some signs of de-escalation. China could have chosen a consulate, for example, ones in Hong Kong, that would have been a more aggressive position. And we also saw a researcher that the US was looking for that had been hiding out in the San Francisco consulate being turned over to US officials. But it seems that longer term tensions around everything from diplomacy, spying, intellectual property theft, and all these other areas will likely continue, particularly as we look ahead to those elections in November in the US.